Is it all over for landlords? We've just seen introduced into Parliament one of the biggest changes in the private rental sector that we've seen in decades. You might have heard of it. It's called the Renters Reform Bill. And this is going to change the way that landlords do things, and certainly the way that tenants do things moving forwards. Now, we've heard about the Renters Reform Bill. It's not something that has just come out of the blue. It's been out there and spoken about for quite some years, mainly because of the repeal of the Section 21 no-fault evictions. And that's the kind of elements that most people were waiting to see when it actually came into force. But what else is changing? Well, first of all, let's talk about the sentiment out there. What do landlords and tenants actually think about this? Well, I think it's been a long time coming. And regulation, as a landlord myself, with over 150 tenants to look after, regulation just makes the good people better, and it pushes away the bad rogue landlords. So I think it's always going to be a good thing. Now, anything in business, you have to adapt in order to survive. We know that. Otherwise, you'll simply just get gobbled up. So let's talk about the key point here first. The number one thing on everybody's mind is the Section 21 eviction repeal. So Section 21 has been around for quite some time. It's part of the Housing Act, and it gives the ability for landlords to be able to evict a tenant under mandatory grounds, which means that the judge has to award possession without having to give any reason, because it's a no-fault eviction. So that came with notice periods. You had to give 2 months' notice in a 6-month contractual period, and you wouldn't be able to serve the notice at the beginning of the tenancy. It had to be upon month 4. So month 4, you give 2 months' notice, which takes you to your 6-month period. So that's going to be removed. And we're going to be going on to something that's very, very different, and something that we've not really experienced in England before, and that is periodic tenancies. So straight from the offset, tenants are going to be able to give you notice at any point during their contractual periods or their AST contracts. So when can we expect this to come into being law? Well, it was introduced into Parliament in May. By the time it goes through the whole process, generally speaking, probably about 12 months after. So we're looking probably at May 2024 before all of these elements actually come into play. So what are they going to introduce? So overview of bill measures. This is directly here from the government's website. Number 1, abolish Section 21 no-fault evictions and move to a simpler tenancy structure where all assured tenancies are periodic, providing more security for tenants and empowering them to challenge poor practice and unfair rent increases without the fear of eviction. This is a big step. It's a huge step. But what they're doing is they are giving us different grounds under what is now Section 8. So we can get rid of tenants that are causing antisocial behaviour or are seriously in rent arrears. So they've actually added this, and they've said that to introduce more comprehensive possession grounds so landlords can still recover their property, including where they wish to sell their property or move in close family. So let's pick up that one. So they can evict a tenant where they want to either move into the property themselves or move in close family members. Now, as far as I've read it and as far as I'm aware, they aren't able to remarket the property for 2 months after they've evicted somebody under these grounds, which kind of makes sense because lots of people were using these grounds and then not actually moving into the property or using it for a member of their family. So that's what the new legislation says. They can't remarket the property until 2 months after in case it falls through. Now, they've also given a huge long list of what we now know as Section 8 grounds, and there's a lot more grounds now than there were before. So that's for a separate video, and I'll do something on that to break them down a little bit, but it does go on for quite a long time. It's a lot of grounds to talk about. The next element that they've put in is to provide stronger protections against backdoor evictions by ensuring tenants are able to appeal excessively above market rents. So this is going to stop people from trying to evict tenants by putting the rent up so it's just completely out of reach and they're forced to move out. So as of now, landlords will still be able to increase rents to the market price for their property, and an independent tribunal will make a judgment on this if needed to avoid fettering the freedom of the judiciary, and the tribunal will continue to be able to determine the actual market rent of a property. So if you put a property price up to an unachievable price for tenants, they can go to tribunal, and then they can have somebody that will make a decision on your behalf to see what the true market rent is of that property. Is that a good thing? Well, yeah. I think market rent is market rent, and you shouldn't be really trying to exploit tenants that can't afford to pay any more than what the market rent is allowing in your area. So the next element is to introduce a private rented sector ombudsman that private landlords will now have to join. Now, up until now, it's only been agents that were required by law to join a redress scheme or a property ombudsman. So for those that don't know what that is, if you're a tenant and you have a problem with your agency, the way that they're conducting their business, if you're making complaints and they're not addressing them, they're not giving you any satisfaction, then you as a tenant can go to the ombudsman or the redress scheme and make a complaint against that agent. Then the ombudsman or the redress scheme will start an investigation, and they could either fine the agent or they could even strike them off. And you've got to be a member of the redress scheme and the ombudsman by law to be able to operate. So it could be quite severe. Now, up until now, private landlords haven't had to join the ombudsman or the redress scheme, even though we do because it's professional, but there's been no legal requirement up until now. So that's going to be introduced, and they say that this will provide fair, impartial and binding resolution to many issues and prove quicker, cheaper and less adversarial than the court system. Then they've got creating a private rented property portal to help landlords understand their legal obligations and to demonstrate compliance. So a private rented property portal. Now, as I understand this, there was talk about this being a scores on the doors type of scheme where tenants could go, they could review the landlord to see what points, if you like, they have and make a guided decision on whether they want to rent from that person. But I don't think it is reciprocal. I don't think that the landlord can go on and view the tenant. So I think this is going to be a little one-sided. Now, it says that this will provide better information to tenants in making informed decisions when entering into a tenancy agreement, and it will also support local councils, helping them target enforcement activity where it is needed the most. And then finally, on the government website, it says that they're now going to give tenants the right to request a pet. Pets in lets. We're back at that topic. So they're saying that they have a right to request and the landlord cannot unreasonably refuse. Wow. Okay. I love pets. I'm a landlord. I don't have a problem with pets. I've got 3 dogs, but the problem being is dependent on the property, because it's got to be down to the makeup of the property as well. It's equally as important, because if you're in a block of flats and you're on the 15th floor, is it feasible to have a pet in that property? If you live in a HMO, that's a shared house, a house in multiple occupation. There are 6 or more other tenants potentially in that property. What if they've got allergies? What if tenants are working nights and there's a loud dog next door? What if it scratches, etc.? So you've got to take in the whole picture here. So single let properties, buy to lets, that's where you live on your own or with your family, then okay, don't have a problem with that. But HMOs starts to become an issue. What if room 1 wants a gerbil and it comes alive at 3 o'clock in the morning and starts going around and it's got a squeaky little wheel, you know, and the tenant next door is wide awake because of it? What if there's somebody in room 4 that's working nights and there's a dog in room 2 and somebody knocks on the door, the postman or an Amazon delivery, the dog goes nuts, keeps them awake. So you've got to take all of this into consideration. They've also said that landlords will be able to require pet insurance to cover any damage to the property. Now that's kind of been put back in. When we had the Tenant Fees Ban Act, all of those types of extra costs were taken out. So they've kind of added that back in. So that's pretty much the bullet points. Now, this is going to change. It's going to evolve. It's in Parliament at the moment. It's being discussed. And I'm sure that they will add things and they'll tweak things and they'll take things away, etc., as is always the case. But hey, am I worried as a private landlord? Absolutely not. Go back to Section 21. We very rarely use Section 21 anyway. We'll only really rely on Section 8 if we have to for serious rent arrears. So it's all about your due diligence, making sure you take the right person, do all of your background work and your homework on the tenant to make sure they're suitable, and we can all move forwards. Don't forget, you've got to adapt to survive. I'll keep you informed. I'll let you know if there's any more changes. And in the meantime, please share this. And please do subscribe to my channel because, of course, everyone that subscribes helps the algorithm and helps me get my message out to even more people. See you on the next one.